Special schools tend to have more mixed classrooms, tend to be based on ability rather than on chronological age. But we separate those children off, and we deny children in mainstream schools the opportunity to learn from and engage with children who have disabilities. We separate girls into one set of schools and boys into another set of schools quite often, a pattern which is particularly prominent in post-primary education. The state still provides funding for a number of fee-paying prep schools, pathways, portals to the grammar school system, which, as Jim Curran has already capably illustrated, predominantly favour wealthier families. But, given the context of inter-community conflict and the ongoing tensions, the most notable dimension of educational division is the religious segregation of our schools. The Good Friday Agreement acknowledged that enduring sectarian segregation of schools needed to be addressed in the long-term interests of building a shared and peaceful future here. But 25 years after the agreement, only around 92% of pupils still attend schools that reflect the divided nature of Northern Irish society in the composition of their classrooms, their staff rooms, and their boardrooms. In those schools, a British or Irish ethos is embedded in the subjects that are taught, in the way that they're taught. In geography, a controlled school may draw on examples of old limestone pavement in Yorkshire, whereas in the maintained school, the limestone pavement is the Burren in the Republic. So, subtle ways, alongside the subjects they're taught, the games that they play, the holidays that they celebrate, and the perspectives that they are consciously or unconsciously exposed to on religion, culture, and historical events. There are, of course, a number of schools that, although they're not classified as integrated, do attract a large number of pupils from across the community divide. Dominican College in Portstewart, St Columbanus College in Bangor are rare but notable examples on the maintained side of the fence. BRA, just up the road, is one of those schools that likes to think of itself as super mixed. However, it's the Royal Academy. They have a crown on their badge. They play rugby. There's no provision for Irish language. Notwithstanding these exceptions, the vast majority of schools have very, very few pupils from the other community. And 1/3 of all schools in Northern Ireland do not have any pupils at all from the other side. So the separation of schools has along community religious lines has costs, societal and environmental as well as financial. The inculcation of a vast swathe of future generations into the mindset of one side or another, Catholic Irish or British Protestant, has a high social cost. And in an era of high inflation, segregation is a costly luxury. If you drive through almost any village in Northern Ireland, you're almost guaranteed to see two schools. This has already been indicated. Often they're only a couple of yards apart. Often both of them are struggling to stay open. And research undertaken by my colleague Stephen has identified that there are at least 32 such situations. While one of those schools may be oversubscribed with not enough space to accommodate their current enrolment, the neighbouring school from the other community may be struggling to fill all of their desks. Sectoral loyalty and a drive for community preservation can align with animosity and misunderstanding to create a situation where attending a school of equal quality but a different tradition is for many families effectively unthinkable. Many parents fear the loss of a school that has served generations, not merely as a place of education, but as a focus for community activity. And the threat of school closures has led some communities to try to come together to form a common solution, only to discover that the planning authorities appear to be operating wholly independently of each other, and that they're constrained by legislation, policy and convention that hinders the development of innovative shared local solutions. So the maintained school, threatened with closure, merges with a maintained school 5 miles down the road. The controlled school, its neighbour threatened with closure, merges with a controlled school 5 miles in the opposite direction. There is no legal provision to allow those two schools to come together as an amalgamation or to come together as a federation or some sort of compromise agreement. It doesn't exist. Global warming is an issue that affects the whole planet. And school segregation here is a contributor to greenhouse gases. Every bus and every family car that passes a perfectly adequate school to take children to a different school some miles further away adds to the environmental burden. Research conducted by Ulster University to travel to post-primary schools identified that an additional unnecessary travel of 130 million miles per year takes place in order for pupils not to attend their nearest post-primary school, but another one further away because of school choice, academic selection, or community segregation. And even with modern, less polluting cars, it's estimated to cost personal car owners in excess of £20 million every year, and to create more than 9,000 tonnes of carbon dioxide. The operation of educational administration and management in Northern Ireland is often bewildering for those outside of the system. And frankly, speaking from somebody who has been on the inside, it's bewildering inside as well. And this complexity lies at the heart of the high costs. Segregation in education may be underpinned by legislation and policy, but it is sustained by public funding. The government effectively bankrolls school division by maintaining a range of siloed administrative organisations. The Education Authority looks after the administration of the state-controlled schools. CCMS, the Catholic Council for Maintained Schools, manages and represents schools that are managed under the auspices of the Catholic Church. The Council for Integrated Education caters for integrated schools, and CNG represents the interests of Irish medium schools. The relatively recently created CSSC, the Controlled School Support Council, is a collective organisation that represents controlled schools. All of these organisations, with all of their buildings and all of their maintenance, are bankrolled from the public purse. The government also provides money towards the operation of the Catholic Schools Trustee Service, which supports the management of Catholic schools, and the Governing Bodies Association, which looks after the interests of grammar schools. There are also other costs. The segregated system is served by 2 teaching colleges that have historically provided teachers for primary schools on either side of the divide. Stranmillis, the controlled side, and St Mary's, the maintained side. They would argue with that, but that's certainly the perception. Both of these colleges fall under the umbrella of Queen's University. They're both colleges under the same university. I was at an open day at Queen's with my son a short time ago, and they had different tables round the corner from each other. They weren't cooperating with each other. And neither of these colleges are particularly large. So additional funds are provided, again out of the public purse, premia, to cover the additional costs of being a small college. At the same time, in a vain attempt to patch the colander, the government, the European Union, and external philanthropists pump large sums of additional monies into the educational system to create opportunities for the schools from the two traditions to work together. So they're funding the segregation of schools, and then they're funding more money to bring those schools back together again. My granny would have said good money after bad, but... So we drew on figures from the European Union, the Northern Ireland Executive, Deloitte, and other academic and verifiable sources. And Stephen and I made an attempt to quantify the financial cost of maintaining all of this segregation, including all of the various dimensions I've already alluded to. Some of the researchers said, look, this is too blooming difficult. We'll give you a top figure and a bottom figure, and the real number will be somewhere in the middle. So Stephen and I said, right, we'll go for the middle figure. It'll only take 5. We'll go for the middle figure. Some of the figures were calculated a number of years ago, so we applied a little bit of an uplift to account for inflationary rises. After we'd done all our tottling up, we came up with a figure that segregation in education costs over £220 million every year. That's £1 million every school day. It's just being spent on keeping our children apart. So, our figures are an informed estimate, a best guess. The actual figure might be higher and it might be lower. But one thing is abundantly clear. Funding, which could be spent directly on educating children, is being wasted. And at a time when budgets are under extreme pressure. We recognise change is not a cost-neutral option. It will cost money to make changes. We'll have to equip teachers and pupils to engage with diversity and difference in a way that they're unfamiliar with. Money for peace-building efforts will still be needed. And initial teacher education will require reform. We'll need to reform school structures, the organisation of the way we govern our schools, and the complex system of school administration and management will have to be dismantled and replaced. Just a quick warning though, a previous effort that resulted in the creation of EA wasted several £1 million and took a very long time indeed. The alternative, continued division, communal distrust, and the social and economic impact that may engender, may be even more costly in the long term. The question I leave you with is, it's not, can we afford to address segregation of schools, but rather, how can we afford not to address it? Thanks.
Thank you so much, Matthew. That brings us to an end for our 3 speakers. It's now lunchtime. We've dealt with the present education system, and I think we can probably all agree it's not working. Segregation does not work. Just to let you know that all 3 speakers' speeches will be available. We'll get those published. We're going to have lunch now, and at 1:45, we'll be back with the future. Thank you very much.